Hey guys, welcome to week 4 of PRDN330, where we're looking at keyshot. This week we're going to be looking at lighting, and we're going to be looking at a couple different things. The first thing that we're going to be looking at is kind of just our general lighting settings here. And the second thing that we're going to be looking at is actually creating geometry that facilitates lighting inside our environment. So the first thing that I'm going to be doing is looking at rendering this in context with my backplate image that I was using last week, and just trying to render this to look as close to real as possible in this here. So for starters, I'm going to be doing a different material. We've been doing lots of metal stuff, so I figured we'd change it up and do something with wood. And I'll go ahead and start with, let's try walnut for starters. I don't really like the color. So after tinkering around with a few of the defaults, I wasn't happy with any of them, so I went and I found this one in the cloud library here that looks much better and needs a couple adjustments to it, mostly just the scale of it. So under the texture here, it's got the good old-fashioned mapping type. I'm going to go ahead and just bring that scale down. Yeah, much better. This actually looks much more like the kind of wood that you'd find in a rolling pin, which is unfortunately more times than not kind of cheap looking wood. So we'll run with that. I do kind of want to make it maybe just a little bit darker. Okay, so it's using the texture here, doing a color to number for the roughness. Nice, nice, nice. This is where it's getting that from. Color, blend with color, and let's go for something a little bit more like that. Okay, that's pretty much all I'm going to do with the material itself. I don't have any qualms with that. Next thing is going to be environment. I think I had determined that the indoor living room was kind of, at least in some ways, the closest. I just need the shadow to be going the other direction here. There we go. And we're going to need to do a couple other things here. I will come back to the environment here in a second. Let's go and take a look at that lighting tab. So our lighting presets here, these kind of affect the way that the overall lighting acts in the program as a whole. So here in the performance mode, you can see it disables light source materials and shadows, so it'll run better. Basic is simple direct lighting with shadows for basic scenes and fast performance. Direct and indirect lighting with shadows for greater realism. And we've got interior, jewelry, and jewelry is where you get a full simulation of all lighting effects, including indirect lighting. That's how you get all that nice reflections in gemstones and such. And then a custom. So if we start with like an interior one, for example, here, you can see how the difference between the two there and how that changes the way that the light is bouncing around and reflecting. And that adjusts here some of our environment lighting, the shadow quality, bouncing off the ground or not. Probably do want some of that. And we're doing interior mode. That's pretty much all I'm going to do here. If I want to do more ray bounces or not, this just has to do with how much, the maximum number of times the light is reflected or refracted as it passes through the scene. So go ahead and just leave that as is. One thing I'm noticing straight off the bat, notice how my cans here in the back are reflecting. I need to go to my environment and go ahead and make the ground reflection a thing. And our ground size needs to be big enough to capture the whole thing. Pretty good, not so bad. And what else can we do to this? We do need to adjust the brightness and the contrast a bit. Because if we notice like how bright it is over here, it's quite a bit bright. So I'm actually going to raise that quite a bit. Try adjusting my contrast, making it a little bit sharper. Seeing how that looks. Interesting. What other adjustments do we have here? We could adjust. That's fine, that's fine. Am I happy with the rotation? Yeah, that's all right. Something that I want to do is I kind of want to get a little bit more top light on this. Notice how the light's coming very flat down here. I'm pretty sure if I raise the height, I'm not sure if that'll fix it or not. That was a little bit better. But I might actually just leave this at 0 for now. And we'll go ahead and use, we'll use the HDRI editor in this case. Kind of seeing where that's reflecting in. Maybe it's a little bit better there. Can always try to come a little bit sharper. I should probably try to actually reflect a little bit more of how sharp that light is. So instead of doing a round one, let's go ahead and do a rectangular. And I'll actually go ahead and try to mimic that as much as possible. And kind of bring that around here. So there you can see that that's where it's kind of right going directly down it there. So maybe with that in place there, I might actually go back to my settings. Maybe actually turn the brightness down on this and let my pin here do more of the heavy lifting of the lighting. Because in that way we get a little bit more of it. Instead of it trying to illuminate the whole thing around, we're actually getting a more true lighting object, kind of similar to that there. I guess in this case I might actually want a little bit more. Let me see where the... Okay, so that's not hitting the front anymore. That's hitting the front. So I went just... Yeah, I think right about where I had it was pretty close. So I'll do a little bit taller. I'll go ahead and click that pin and maybe bring it down, make it a little bit more like so. Not too shabby. And let's see, what other things do I want to do to this? Anything in the HDRI that I can think of looking at this? Looks like we do have a slight secondary reflection right here. So it might be worth just throwing in another pin. That is a rectangle as well. We'll make this one tall but thinner. And we'll go ahead and put this one a little bit over there. Kick up the brightness on it. See if that helps a little bit more. It does look like it might be a little bit darker up above, so I might actually want to bring these down lower. It's not so bad if I keep going over. Okay, so there's the back side, I think. Or was that the... That's so interesting how it's... I guess this is essentially in line with it. Right there. Does that mean that technically this should be over there? I don't know, I kind of like where this one was, personally. So maybe just right around there. So there we can see with adding this in here, I'm actually getting these nice bright white highlights here. Technically, those should be maybe just a little bit more, just ever so slightly more forward. And maybe what I need to do with that is actually just bring that brightness down a little bit so it's not quite as intense. Because it does to me look like this part should be more like over here. At the same time, I just don't like how reflective that looks. Even though technically that's more correct. Maybe I need to bump up the brightness on that guy. Oops, not that much. I'm also getting an underglow there. That's not good. So let me shrink this one down. Yeah, I definitely feel like it looked better. It's just a skosh coming up over the edge. Yeah, to me, I don't know. To my eye, that looks better than trying to actually move it over more. Yeah. Some of the other things that I need to do to this to make it blend in better is, in general, one of the things I'm seeing here is like there's a bit of a film grain going on, and I have a couple other little color things that I want to tweak to this, and part of that is done in some other tools, like the image here. which I don't remember if we actually have a whole segment about this or not. Let me check that real quick. Great, so we don't actually talk about it too much, so I will go ahead and demonstrate a little bit of what's going on here in the image section as well as lighting. So in here you get a little bit more kind of like your basic Photoshop controls that help adjust your image in a multitude of different ways with different sort of things like your curve histogram there, the coloring of it, denoise, bloom, vignette, things like that. Kind of seeing how that, I'm not sure that's actually showing much. I wonder if I have to have a original and denoised. I was wondering if that was actually going to add noise to it or not. Doesn't look like it. Color, things like saturation. Notice here that it is affecting the entire photo, not just my pin there. That is important to know. Layers. Use a front plate. This is probably where you can assign in another layer to go on top of this and adjust the opacity of that. I actually have not messed with the layers too much. That's most of the time I stick over in the basic category, but this is the photographic side. Chromatic aberration. This is an interesting one. So this is where you can actually add color fringe in the high contrast areas. I have found that just adding a little bit of it helps kind of blend it in a little bit. Different varying amounts. A vignette is obviously adding a vignette to the whole image. More times than not, you really don't want. A bloom. We can see how this is affecting here. It's kind of adding in that bad mall photographer effect. But in tasteful amounts, it's not bad. Tone mapping. We can adjust with our white balance here. I always prefer slightly warmer photos most of the time, not too much overall exposure. Probably just leave that as is. Contrast, not so bad. Biggest ones that you'll probably be seeing use of is the chromatic aberration. You can see there's the basic photographic there. I'll go ahead and leave it on the basic one. I was not seeing much happening with the denoising. I think it's actually doing the opposite of what I want it to be doing. It's trying to smooth it. So we'll go ahead and leave the little bit of that on there. Aberration bias. Great. We can see what happens when you add a lot. I guess that wasn't a lot. Let's try adding a lot. Still not considered a lot, huh? There you go. There you can start to see that there, where it actually is adding those in that really high contrast areas. It's adding in those chromatic. You can kind of actually see it here a little bit in the image itself. So putting it at 1 is, there's a lot. There's even more. 1 seemed like a tasteful amount to me. And yeah, let's see if there's anything else we want to kind of tweak with that. It's not terrible. It's not my favorite. I think there's a few other things I could do to be tweaking this to make it look a bit better color-wise and things like that. There's a couple other things that I could do to better match it. But overall, that's not too shabby for spending just a little bit of time on it. So again, that's just looking at a little bit of those lighting effects there, using the environment and the lighting, as well as adding in the chromatic effect here, which just kind of helps tie it in a little bit better into the image. And camera, I believe we're looking at, that is also something that you can do to help blend in where this is sitting in the image. So for example, if you had something with like depth of field, you could place this in such a way that it is correct. There's the correct amount of blurring. So for this particular photo, this actually does not have a huge depth of field. I think it's basically like right around here-ish seems to be where it starts to go out of focus. And then same up here, probably like up here somewhere. So where my pin is should be mostly in focus. Maybe just a skosh. If we just barely touched it with just a little bit of that depth of field, we could adjust that. But again, I think we're going to be looking at cameras more next week. So I will leave that for then. The other thing I wanted to do, and first thing I'll do is I'm just going to go ahead and save out this render real quick. Okay, so I got that saved out, and the other thing that I wanted to look at here is something that's kind of on the lighting subject of a completely different way to light this. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually go to our settings, and we are going to, for our background, we're going to choose a color, and I'm going to just choose black because that's the most obvious one, I would say. I'm going to get rid of ground shadows and ground reflections so that it's kind of just floating here in space. And I'm going to get a nice rolling pin angle. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, let's do this actually. Let's create a blank environment map. And for the environment itself, the color of it, we're going to make black. Now you may have noticed my object has disappeared. That is because there is no light. There's no light source from anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my geometry view, which is this little tab here up at the top. What that will do is that'll allow me to see what's going on, even though I can't really see much. That red is referring to kind of the frame that I'm looking at right now. You can see there's the camera, how it's looking at my rolling pin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding in geometry. So we're going to go to Edit, Add Geometry, Plane. And I'm just going to scoot that back here and rotate it up. Go ahead and turn on that scale. Hit OK. So there you can see that I've created a big plane that's just chilling. Nothing's going on. If I go over to my scene, I can see that I've got that plane now. Looks like I've got another one in there. I'll just go ahead and stick with the one here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my materials, and I'm going to go, I can just search light. And I'm going to choose emissive. I guess I'll type in emissive instead. Oh, is emissive not default? Or am I spelling it wrong? Light, emissive. There we are. I guess I'm missing some there. Emissive, neutral. Let's go ahead and drop that on there. Okay, so there we can start to see what's going on. And don't worry, we'll deal with actually hiding this material from the camera, but still achieving the effect of it in just a second here. So I think the effect I'm going to go for is I'm going to throw in a couple more of these. And space-wise, something like that. And this one, something like that. Okay. And my light source here is, you can see, is lighting all of them at the moment. Just a little bit, some more than others. Looks like I need some more lighting sources. So I'm going to go and add in another plane. So I'll go ahead and move this one. Something like that. Go ahead and add in the same material to that one. I don't want to link these together because eventually I'm actually going to change the brightness of them as I go along. So here's what I'm working with so far. Got this one from the side. The one in front, you know, actually I might backlight these instead. So I'm going to take that plane there, grab my move tool, and I'm actually going to just keep moving it. Until it moves behind them. And this one here, make it a bit taller. And then I think I'll throw one more in from the top. Let's make sure I'm getting this in the correct position. Bring it over this way. Let's go up. And we want wider. And bring out the, oh, I see the thing, it's going that way. I need to rotate it. So hit OK on that. Give that one a material as well. Looks like I definitely need to make that one a bit bigger. So we'll go ahead and hit OK on that for now. Okay, so now's time to start playing around with them. And the best way to actually play around with them so you're seeing what you would normally be seeing is to go to your camera. Is it camera or is it actually in the material? I think it's in the material. Go to the materials, there we go. And then under each one of these emissives, you'll need to check off visible to camera, and visible to camera. So then what we're left with is our rolling pins that are seeing the effects of the light, but are on a different backdrop here. So I'm going to go ahead and get my camera set up like I want it to be. So right now I'm having a hard time getting where I want it to go. I think we'll do something like, let's kind of pose it here. And something I'm going to do right now is I'm actually just going to create a new camera, and I know we'll talk about this later, and I'm just going to lock it. That way I can always come back to this view. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and see about zooming back in here. Oh, I hate it when it does this to me. I cannot figure out for the life of me why it does this, but for some reason the zooming gets to a point where it's just like had enough and it won't properly zoom in, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay, so let's take this first plane here and let's see, it's that one there. Emissive neutral, it's this one here. And let's lower the intensity on that and just see how that affects it. Bring it back up, bring it back up. Okay. Maybe somewhere in there. We can even change the color of it if we wanted. Something really dramatic. Or just a little hint of that color. And we'll go to, which one is this? The back, which I'm actually going to go ahead and edit that position a little bit. I'm gonna turn off those so it's only dealing with scale. Hit OK on that. Then I'm going to be clicking over here on the material for that one and bring up the intensity, just seeing what that's doing. It's basically giving it that nice highlight around it. And you can also see that my chromatic aberration is also applying here as well. So I'll go ahead and leave that maybe just a little bit lower, somewhere down in like here in the 4 area. The color of that one, if you leave it like white, and obviously black is going to be no light. So you can see here, this is a way of adjusting it. So am I on, is it on a different side than I think it is? Again, this silly zooming thing. Oh, is that where the plane is? Oh yeah, no, definitely that's not going to do. So translate wise, I'm going to grab that. Oh no, it's okay, it's down there. That's the camera angle that I'm seeing. Okay, so it's there. Yeah, that's fine. We'll go ahead and adjust that color, and we'll just make that somewhere around there. And then our last one here is this kind of side filler. Nope, I already did that one. The last one is that one. Where is that one positioned? From the other angle. Okay, that is Numero 2. Oh, that's why, because that's the one that I was adjusting. I thought I was adjusting the backdrop. This was the backdrop here. Okay, so the backdrop here. There we go. Now you can see the intensity of how much that back reflection adds. We definitely don't want that much. Lower is probably better in this case. So we want just a subtle. And the color of that one I was saying could be something else. You could see there that it adds like a outline of a different color there. In this case, I'm probably just going to stick with kind of that grayish color. And I do want to fix my first one because I'm actually really not digging that hue. Something that's a little more tuned to what it is. Maybe. Yeah, I can see white doesn't look good. It definitely needs to be some sort of blend of another color. Hit OK on that. I might go back and just slightly tweak this and bring it down maybe even more. Make it a little less sticking out. I think one other thing I was thinking of doing is taking this one, moving it up just a little bit. Okie doke. And yeah, there's a couple other things in tips and tricks that you can do with this sort of lighting scenario. This is just kind of an example of just basically a completely different way of lighting your scene using geometry to light it up. One of the other techniques of something that I've heard of people doing is actually creating like a dot. Maybe I'll actually go and try to do it here to see how it affects this. Essentially what you do is you create a sphere. That's the word I was looking for. A sphere, and we'll go ahead and turn on the scale of this. Make it a little bit smaller. And what we do is we actually move this that's where I'm going to adjust it here. Where is that sphere going? There it is. Like negative 1000. I want it to go in the Y direction, like 1000. So it's kind of far back there. You can see it up there. And we're going to apply the same light effect to it. And then what you do, and I'm going to go ahead and just turn off these other ones so we can kind of see how the effect works. You can barely see it there, but apparently what you can do is you can take that one there and then make the intensity like really bright from far away. I don't even know if I'm doing that right, actually. Maybe it's still too big. Bring it in a little bit closer. It's definitely having a hard time with it. Maybe it was a different type of light. I could definitely be wrong. No, I think it was. I think it was this, and I think the effect that it was. So then when I go to adjust it, you can see here that it kind of adds a more blanketed sort of light that's very subtle. That's just kind of an interesting effect. You could also do things like adding in smoke or something like that, and like having it scatter through that as well. That's another option. But there's a lot of different ways that you can light using geometry. There, as you can see here, there's other options as well for types of lights. Some of these are more for like if you were to have a bulb or something and you want to apply essentially a scattering light like this that's in an area light or a spotlight or something like that, you can do that. Those kind of work sometimes in this sort of scenario, but you definitely have to play around with it. But the main point that I'm getting at in terms of lighting here is that it's not just limited to your environment and your HDRI. You can actually physically build a lighting studio, as you might call it. Basically, that's what I did here. Was I created light panels and changed the colors and the temperatures and the intensity of them, and am able to create something in here. You don't have to have a black background. I could have a white background if I wanted to. I could have a pink background if I wanted to. That's totally up to you. That one you want to stay black. This one, though, this one can be whatever color you want it to be. So yeah, that's just a different way of looking at it, and I think right there I'm actually seeing my ground potentially. Let me see. Is that what that is? Maybe not. I'm not sure what that is actually. It's very interesting. Anyways, that's kind of what I wanted to go over and show you, at least in terms of lighting, is just kind of a couple tricks there and ways to potentially help with your project with photo matching. And for this week's exercise, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be giving you guys a model, and your job is going to be to light it in as potentially dramatic as a fashion as you can using this sort of technique that I've shown here. I kind of played it safe here and went more for something that looked more realistic, quote, quote, though nothing looks realistic about 3 pins floating in the air. But more of what I'm looking for is kind of some extreme lighting, and I'll show you a quick example here of something that I did once upon a time. So here's the example I did last year for the same class, and I obviously didn't mess with my materials too much. It doesn't look super, but mostly what I'm looking at here is just kind of the example of the sort of lighting that we're going to be going for with this exercise. Play around with it, play around with colors, get creative, and just try to make it look as dramatic and interesting as possible. Only using geometry-based lighting. Don't use any of the environment lighting, and using these emissives and things like that to light the object that I'll be giving you guys. So that'll be the exercise for this week. So take a look at that sheet for the deets. And that's all I've got for you.